All right. So today is October 6th, and what we want to do is discuss those things. But we will discuss more than that because there are lots of interesting things happening and working, and lots of courses going on. So I don't even break it into news and practice, but rather follow the news, following the practice. We also have a discussion prepared today. It's a different one of our participants. Last time, he wanted to present his use case, and we'll do this. We'll just not start with it right away, but a little bit into the lecture or the webinar, okay? But it says use case presentation. That's what we mean. Okay, that will be a kind of a brainstorm session, and everybody will be welcome to that too. Now, first of all, some of the news. So the news was that Andrew Ng published another course. He is amazing, keeps producing these courses nonstop, and that one is about Palm, like this, P-A-L-M, except that use some special capitalization, but this is the Google LLM. Well, okay, so for that, we need, I don't really even see where is, oh, here it is. That's the link. But I'll tell you first of all what happened. And keep in mind that it's my personal opinion. Who am I to go against the almighty Google? But my personal opinion is that it's terrible. And now I'm asking you to help me correct my misunderstanding. Here's what happened. That's one of the learning courses. Let's open that. And I'm logged in. Yes, should work. Now, I really, to give you the complete experience, I really should stop sharing and then share again, but this time with sound. So if we hear some interesting lectures like this, then at least the introduction.
Welcome to this short course, Pair Programming with a Large Language Model, built in partnership with Google. LLMs are changing how we write code. When I was prototyping some LLM-based translation software to translate some deep learning.ai content, I had to use some unfamiliar Python libraries. And rather than reading the docs, I had an LLM take a first cut at writing the code, which I then fixed. Experienced developers are using LLMs in many ways to speed up our work. In this course, you learn about this set of emerging best practices, including how to get an LLM to help you with error handling, performance improvements, and lots more. I'm delighted that our instructor for this course is my old friend, Lawrence Moroney, who is lead advocate for AI at Google.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and I'm really excited to work with you and your team on this.
Okay, so Mr. Moroney is a well-known person. He is on every webinar. He is on every conference, I/O, I think it's called. And let's get started. Well, here's the problem. You need to click on that, and you can stop. You don't have to listen to them. Well, guys, the first line that doesn't work is this one. Now, for them, it works. They installed something. So if I wanted to show it to you, and I will show it to you, I can show it right here. It works. You see, you can, this is a notebook. That's a wonderful technology somewhere that they have implemented. You see, there's a lecture and there is a PALM with PLM. There is a notebook live. So if I click here, it runs. Yes. But if I click it, I like to copy and paste and put it into my area. I couldn't find any library in the world that is called utils and that contains this get API key. The rest are probably okay. I installed all of that. I installed configuration. I obtain the key. That's not hard. Nothing was really as easy. So my personal opinion, and you might kill me for that, is that Google had a great failure with their first show. When they showed their AI, it didn't work, and the stock lost, what, I think 8% in 1 minute. And since then, they scared every employee about what he or she is allowed to say, not allowed to say. That's my personal impression, and they're scared out of the wits, and nothing works just because everybody's nervous to do the wrong thing. And I would be, my personal opinion, that I would be, because ChatGPT is killing them. Obviously, if I'm not Googling, and how many more people are not Googling? Well, but what do I know? That I don't know. What I do know is that that's a notebook, and it's pretty much like all other notebooks. And what it illustrates is pair programming. For example, you can give it your code and say, critique that code, or you can say, could you write it in a more Python-esque way? Yes, you can write it this way, it will work, but is it good enough? These are all the examples that Mr. Maroney is going through. The only problem is that compared to Copilot from Microsoft and ChatGPT, that's kind of a maturish. That is very easy. Of course, you can do it. Of course, you can do the ChatGPT without that complication, but the use case itself, I didn't find it amazing. That's the whole story. So let me show you at least a little bit more of how it works. So we exploring the modes, the same idea. So it is not ChatGPT that we're talking to here. We're initializing a different library, but other than that, it's pretty familiar to you. So you tell it who you are. You tell it you are an experienced Python programmer, and therefore critique my code and help me. And let's go a little bit more. Ask an LLM. Now, that's the famous thing. So it should be ChatGPT, but we're not saying ChatGPT, so we're calling LLM. We're not doing Palm either. In any case, it works. Help me generate the code. It generates the code. That's the prompt. That's the result. And show me your result. Well, here there was no interesting stuff, but it verified the plumbing, that the plumbing would work. I wanted to show maybe another pair programming, and he goes into a complicated example. Okay, complicated example. Again, make a suite. Guys, if you try to go into MakerSeed, it will immediately tell you it's in preview. Be very careful about the results. And it's not serious. In other words, it's just shooting itself in its own foot, but you can run it here.
Coming up now, I've created a bunch of scenarios where you can see how an LLM can be a valuable assistant that responds to your coding needs, as opposed.
Yeah, it can be a valuable assistant that helps you with the coding needs, but so what? Big deal.
So how is it better or worse than what we could do with ChatGPT today? That's my first question.
Okay, my first opinion, and again, I apologize nonstop. It's terrible. It's much worse. It's in preview. It doesn't really work. It's extremely complicated to set up.
Yeah.
Go ahead, try it, and come
It's
back
already
with a
already
clear...
making me sick looking at it. Yeah, it's so much easier with ChatGPT to talk to it like a human. Right. Okay, that's number one. Number two, you mentioned this threat to Google. I think it's very real, but I don't think it's the only threat that ChatGPT is going to face, right? That Google's going to push back. I think lawyers are going to push back. I think any kind of database of value which can actually be useful to people using ChatGPT, is going to start getting extracted as people understand, how powerful this is and how it infringes on people's intellectual property rights. Right. That's my biggest fear. Right. So I don't know what can be done about that. We have
Yes,
to
but we're
democratize
both
data.
glad that we don't have to deal with that right now. Let them fight,
Yeah.
and let's not get in the way.
Yeah. Well, and the other
Their
thing
role.
is this 2-year period, once that diminishes, I think that's just going to make matters worse for Google, meaning
Maybe.
there's like the database
Yeah.
being up to
But
date
on
by
the other
2
hand,
weeks.
maybe it will figure it out.
I
Okay,
hope so,
that
because
looks very similar to Andrew Ng. Okay, well, that was just a quick impression, and I want to say so.
okay, the other question is, out of the 3 LLMs, which one do you find to be best for Python
Coming,
and machine learning, without
so
looking at
that's
this monstrosity?
coming to the next.
Okay.
Okay. Coming to next. My next practical work is in an interesting area, and I'm showing you honestly what I'm doing because that's very real, very practical. So going back here, going into a drive where I find it. And that's guys, what I think is really useful because I'm in the middle of exactly doing it. So here is a friend and a colleague and whatever, but he has very many policy reports to deal with. Many thousands here. If you keep scrolling down, it's a lot. And each policy report has a document and some kind of police story that happened. Some of them are OCR, some not. And he needs to know which one doesn't it want, which one deals with murder, which one doesn't. So the first thing that I do is I put it into Casify, which is by now familiar to you, right? Let's see if it will even open because I have a little problem with this Casify. Let me open it. I know how to open it in Guest. So it's app at casify.com. And since it is an incognito, it doesn't know me. So I get in a normal way, like every other person, username and the password. And many people share their workspaces with me. That friend, Greg, also shares. And I uploaded 3 of those thousands of cases just as an experiment. Then I uploaded those 2 police documents. The reason I use Casify is because all the plumbing is already there. That is not what I'm going to use in the end, but to experiment, to do 1, 2, or 3 questions. And all I need to do, okay, that's a police report, something to do with alcohol, serving it to a minor. And that's why the guy got in trouble. And that's another one, which is OCR. But in any case, we're working hard to make it flawless, and it is more or less flawless. That's OCR'd inside, that's converted to plain text, and I already did it. Right here, it says that you did it for 2 documents, and was alcohol served to a minor. Yes, you say alcohol was served to a minor, but was there murder? Well, that's really Greg's question. Was there injury? And I can afford to make mistakes because it's ChatGPT and it's clever. Was there injury or murder? And it should say no, not that bad. Okay, why am I showing this to you? Because you see what the problem is. You need to process this, And you need to find one simple question, but we don't want to do any kind of regular expressions or search, because we want to run a smart model, ChatGPT, on the back. And you remember, I'm closing that. You remember what I saw. I saw very many files. So the way I'm going to approach this, all these thousands of files, is to run it in Spark. And that's the new thing. Run it in Spark, and inside of Spark, I'm parallel. I can run on thousands of computers. I will probably run first on Spark on this machine, and it would already be in parallel. So it's already 8 times, if I have 8 processors, 8 times the speed, but maybe I'll run it on a Google Cloud. The end result is that I'm getting out of Casify because I want to script it. Now, which model? For that, you go and go to Databricks, because they are the maker of Spark. And you check, what do they say about LLM? Well, they say take full advantage of LLM. What they mean is that, yes, you can run it in Spark, but in the backend, in the end, when you're asking your question, you can ask any model that you give us, and you can also go at a pretty high speed because you're in a cluster. And that's, to me, the first real use case. Because up until now, I listened to all their lectures, listened to all their podcasts, and all they say, well, if you want to run machine learning at scale, you use Databricks. But I don't want to run machine learning at scale. It's already scaled very smartly, vertically. And why would I need horizontal scaling? Am I going to talk to thousands of people at the same time? And that's the first case. Yes, I am going to talk. So if you do this, I think they have a choice of models that you can use. And in particular, they have one that they like. I think it's Dolly. But they say other models also work. Well, here we'll be able to massively test it because it's very clear task. Just tell me if there was a murder involved. That's all, right? Only one question. That is kind of an answer to your question. Which model can you use? Probably any model that's good enough. How hard it is? Well, with Google, it's very hard. I will most likely start with the ChatGPT again because that's the easiest to use. But I will also tell you, if I do get to code additional models, then right now I think there are 2 models. ChatGPT is one, and Anthropic is the most serious contender. Now, Anthropic, if you listen to the lecture, the first lecture came out from the CEO of Anthropic, and that's Amadeo. I think Amadeo, something like that. And he was, prior to this, was an employee of Google and then the employee of OpenAI, so it's all the right places. But now he goes on his own and gets those famous $4 or more billion to start with, because that's what your model costs. It costs billions to train. But Databricks goes with Dolly, which is from Facebook. So if I had all the time in the world, I would try Dolly and Anthropic. Their name is Claude. All right, that is what I wanted
Sorry,
to.
what's the relationship between Databricks and Anthropic and Claude?
Okay,
You lost me.
Databricks is just scale. That is only scale. They don't do any LLM at all.
Okay.
But they will integrate with any LLM, and the preferred that they want to implement is Dolly. And Dolly is really from Facebook.
So getting back to the original question, which one is the best for generating Python?
My
code?
personal opinion, it is ChatGPT first, Anthropic, Claude next. and I still don't know any good competitor after that. But I will know more as things go day by day.
Could you just publish that in the list? Could you just add that to the notes for the meeting?
It's here. Yeah, I'll be very happy to do it.
Just the summary, and we can keep that up to date. All right, good. Thank you.
So for that, I need to go here. And we looked at Google, and it's called Palm. Maybe I should say it is from Google so that you don't have to figure that out. Okay. Then we said best LLM in my opinion. That is, of course, doesn't want to fix it. Is ChatGPT, then Claude. It is from Anthropic, but I don't have to say it. And that's all for now. Well,
And this is for programming, in the context of programming, correct?
Yes, you can run all of them manually. ChatGPT and Claude, you can ask questions. But of course, we're only talking about use it in programming.
Okay.
Now I have a comment. Databricks clusters have Jupyter notebooks. Do you still need GPU with the Spark cluster? The answer is no. When you use a model, very little power is that you need. So you ask it a question, it gives you the answer. No, you don't need it. If you're going to train your own, which to me is a crazy enterprise, they asked Sam Altman of ChatGPT, I'm going to beat you, I'm going to do a better model. Kind of, he said, good luck, because it's $1 billion or 2 billion to start. So that's what I think it is. I think there is a marginal need for GPU. I might be very wrong on that, but at least right now, so far, I run on regular CPUs. Okay, now that was our discussion. I want to make sure I'm on track. We talked about Google. We said that among other models, that's my opinion, and maybe Dolly. So maybe put Dolly. Maybe no. Okay, maybe. Now that's what I wanted to run, but I'm not sure if I will run it. And maybe I'll just describe what things are. But now Fred has his own presentation. It's right here. So let's do this. There
Okay. Now, how do I share on
there
this?
you are. You click on share screen.
I don't see share screen. Where is that?
At the bottom of the Zoom.
I see at the bottom. I see a chat. I see reactions, raise hands, and QA. That's
and
it.
There is a green share screen. Okay.
No.
Mute, stop video, participants, chat, and then share screen. If you have a slide deck, we'll not fight it. We'll just say if you have a slide deck, send it to me and I will display it.
All right. Well, while I'm doing that, let me do this. Maybe it's better if I just describe it.
Okay.
So the idea is I have a complex use case, and so what I did was I boiled it down to its essentials, which would then shape the development of the use case. And the real question I'm trying to answer before I get to the guts of the use case is which scikit-learn or other tools are available for automating the feature engineering process. In other words, feature tools that are like for automating the feature engineering process that can automatically extract features from relational data sets, right? There's something called TPOT, TPOT, which is supposed to be a tool that does something like that in pipelines using genetic programming. But then there's also these selection tools, something called Baruta, and maybe even Lasso helps in that process. but I want to know from the audience, who has experience in doing the feature engineering, and the type of data is all numeric data. It's a lot of it. I've got 1,000 classes of numeric data. In other words, let's talk about arrays. Okay, let's say I have an array with an infinite number of rows and 1,000 columns, right? And I'm trying to do some not only, well, some pre-processing first of all, right? I need to understand, are these different columns independent, right? And also there's a normal operating range for the values in those columns. In other words, I have a column that, if it's above a threshold, it means it's good, it's happy. If it's below a threshold, and it's unhappy, right? And there's a range in between those where it's, where it's happy. Let's say there's a high water, let me change up. Let's say there's a high water mark and there's a low water mark. If I go above the high water mark, it's no good. If I go below the high water mark, it's no good. Let me rephrase that into that terms. So I'm sorry if I caused confusion. So having said that, I want to understand if there are correlations or causal relationships among those columns. And I also understand that there's tools like something called the Pearson or Spearman correlation, or even Granger causality test. Has anybody worked with any of those tools in particular that will allow for the automation of feature engineering along the lines that I described? Because ultimately, I want to know if something's good or something is bad, and of course there's analytics tools that could be easily applied to that, but also I need to understand the causality or the relationships, the correlation between those number of rows. So I got to do some reduction, right? Is it domain reduction, or what's the term when you're reducing the number of data sets? I forget what that type of reduction is called.
Dimensional reduction.
Dimensional
Yeah,
reduction. Thank you,
yeah.
thank you. I had a brain fart, a senior brain fart. So, all right. So let me pause there for questions, and maybe people can join in. I mentioned Teapot, Baruta, L1, Lasso, L1 regularization. Maybe I didn't mention that last time. I mentioned Pearson, Spearman, and also Granger for causality and correlation. Anybody know anything about the automation of feature engineering process and tools and experience in particular? And if not, we can leave it for next time, and I'll send this deck here. I can't talk and chew gum at the same time. I'd rather send the deck offline.
Okay, and I will put your slide deck in the
All right.
folder so everybody will be able to get to it.
That's great. Okay, all right. So if anybody has thoughts on it, I'd really appreciate a continuation of the discussion. And then I think it's better to do it this way than to have everybody drink from a fire hose and get lost in the forest with a description of the use case. So I wanted to, because and also the use case is going to vary based on the inputs I get and some analysis I do, and then we can go from there. All right, that's it.
Fred, yeah, thank you very much. It was an
All right.
interesting use case. I'm listening attentively.
It's a practical use case, and
Yes,
I'm sure people have come across some of this, or will come across it again in the future. So, and I just thought maybe this forum would be a good place to start with a discussion. All right,
yes.
thank you.
Thank you. And I see Al is giving us valuable input and questions here. So first of all, he asked about if you're running Databricks cluster with some Jupyter, do you need GPU? I said theoretically yes, if you're doing something intensive, but practically I have not done it because you take a model and you use it. There's no additional fine tuning, even though on the site on the ChatGPT website, you will find supposedly a chapter on fine-tuning, but that's a joke. It's stolen term. And that's not real fine-tuning. It's just stuffing it with a few questions so that you don't have to send all that information every time. But it's no way that you're changing their model. So you don't need fine-tuning, and don't be misled by the term fine-tuning being used there. It's not real fine-tuning. Now you do ask a question, what about fine-tuning training? And that would apply to open source models that you can get and download, and that's where you get some tutorials, especially on Hugging Face, how you can do it. The problem is that they use the $1 billion to train their model. They will not let you, and you're not recommended to change it, right? So there is no fine tuning there. The architecture is different. It is, you stick it into a let's say Pinecone or another search engine that reacts to syntax, not to keywords. So that's your architecture today. And I hope that answers your question. If not, you will ask some more. And thank you guys for all discussion that you put here on the chat.
Hold the phone. Al Mercado just suggested, I noticed that you just suggested H2O. Al,
Yes.
Could you hover on that? Could you
Well,
elaborate?
H2O is a famous library and a famous company, and it has an auto feature engineering, but so do a few others. So I think that if you Google on
No, but I mean,
okay,
does Al have any further context and actually experience in it, why he thinks it's a good solution? That's was my question. If Alice on
Al?
mute. Okay, I'll just note in the slide that Al suggested that, and we can talk about it next time.
Yes,
All right,
but
thanks, Al.
and you can also Google on driverless IO, and that is that will work. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, and I'll go back to share screen. That was awesome. And I think I covered most of what we wanted to talk about. We had the user case presentation. We looked at Google and their library. I'm sure I can make it work in the end. Somehow I spent a couple hours, by the way, and no, it didn't work. But maybe I'm missing some most obvious things. That's line number one. I will be working on other LLMs just because of this use case where you need a cross and not vertical. Not analyze one case in a very smart way, but instead going horizontal, and that's probably Spark Cluster. Also on our side, the new problems that we're facing in implementing AI are interesting. In our Caseify, we discovered that we use Amazon text extract to get the text out. Super important, right? You have a wonderful model, but you need the text. And first of all, text extract drops all formatting. So you only get the words, which is just right for AI, that's fine. But it has to do OCR correctly. And even if the text is upside down, it should do it. And here's another gotcha. Amazon doesn't tell you, but it only returns 1,000 words of a very large document. So you need to call again and again and again. And that's the kind of things you bump into when you're doing real AI. So we went to implement Adobe, thinking that Adobe is probably the best. They preserve the format. And right now we're putting this new text into AI. And we expect tremendous improvement in the quality because my layer that takes the user query and then goes into the Pinecone, it's a very thin layer. The real power comes from Adobe OCR conversion, and then from ChatGPT, that's the absolutely real power. So that's interesting. That's what we're dealing with. And what are my next steps? So my next steps is adding memory, because so far, every time the user asks a question, and that's where you would add it. I'll show you. That's one possibility. So I will show you. Yes, I will show you that. But that's not what I'm going to use. So let's show that first. So that is kept in an open library or lab here on the OpenAI here. And 7 long chain. And I'm not showing it in a notebook today because it's quicker to just show it here memory. So memory works like this. It's part of the long chain library, and there are these options already built in. You see that by the name of them, they do something with memory. Conversation buffer memory probably takes all your previous conversations and sends them together along with your next question. And you're kind of saying, yeah, that's what I was saying. And now what would you say to the next question? They also have window memory because we may not necessarily send all of the questions, all the long conversation. You've been talking to your ChatGPT psychoanalyst all night, and now you're every time sending everything that you said. That won't work. Instead, keep a window. That's another possibility. Here they explain to you how they do it. So it's a long chain library, and any course about this or them themselves give you the documentation that work great. However, for my purpose, I think that I will use very simply just example from prompt engineering and just the example from the guidelines like this. There was one great example here. It's unbelievable. Maybe I'm wrong, but it would be very easy. The very first textbooks and the very first chapter is your answer. Here's an example that they deal with. And they say, where's grandparent? No, not grand. Here. What they say is your task, and that they say to ChatGPT. So part of your instruction is that its task is to answer in a consistent style. Where does he get consistent style? That's another continuation of the example. The child says, teach me about patience. The grandfather answers in what I would say philosophical manner. That is still input. Then the child says, teach me about resilience, and what will the grandparent answer? So that is the full instruction. So far we said this, and what should be the next one? That I think is also memory. And if I only keep the buffer with all that's been said so far, then I think that simple technique will work right away, and I will not use this long chain memory. Whether a length chain, whether it succeeds or no, that I will know because I'm working on it today. And so next week I will tell you if that worked or no. All right, that's what I wanted to show. And I think that's it. I'm working on an interesting problem of, I think the major key is not the problem. The major key is that the idea is that you tell your ChatGPT, imagine you are a Java programmer, and imagine you're an experienced Java programmer. How would you do this? And it changes its style. That I think is real magic, but that magic started working today, and that is the answer to many of your problems. If you want to tell it, here is the answer that I want. Here are a few examples of the previous conversations, then you can tell it to ChatGPT like this, and no additional special things are needed. So that is, I think, the power of LLM or ChatGPT, and how much success do we get on that road? I'll tell you by next time, because by then it should be done. All right, that is it now. If we go back to our today's outline, then we wanted to scale AI with Spark. Now, that I haven't gone too much into the technical details. I just mentioned that Databricks will talk about this. And the idea, if you know Spark, is clear. Spark scales, that's all. Scales to multiple machines, and even to imitation of multiple machines on one. So I can run, let's say, Spark of 8 nodes. I'm thinking of my 8-node processor on one machine. But in any case, you can scale it to multiple machines. So and put in the LLM at the bottom, at the end. That's the news. And the practice, well, we looked at a lot of practical things, and we discussed some interesting cases. And I wanted you to see that memory, even though then I came to realize that a simple implementation of memory might be just sufficient for your use case. That's it. I think we covered that all. Let me stop share. Okay, and you'll get the chance to ask any questions or express any desires, something we should talk about next time. Because as exciting as it is, we're talking about very interesting things. We need to stop ourselves, right? And at least in my case, go to the next webinar. Yes.
All right. I sent you the slides, and thanks, Al, for the pointer. Appreciate it. All right. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye. All right. Thank you, everyone. Be well.
Thank you, Mark. From James.
Hi, James. Be well.
Oh, you too. We'll talk soon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Jared. Thank you, John, Ignacio, Anthony.